I welcome you all for the webinar on summer management tips, nutrition management for a hot season, and also the management tips for the hot season. Uh, yeah, this is like right now it is 130 participants and more people are coming in, and there are participants from across the globe. So I welcome you all on behalf of Highline and Srinivasa. We have two speakers today for the webinar. One is Viter Arentes. I introduce Viter. Viter Arentes is the global technical service for and global nutrition for Highline International. Viter provides technical service to Highline's customers worldwide and manages the nutrition of pedigree and grandparent breeding flocks in Iowa. Previously, Viter was the tech services director at Highline Brazil. He was responsible for the management of all products and technical support for customers. Prior to joining Highline, Viter worked first at commercial egg production farm as tech manager and later in Brazilian premix company, creating, implementing, and standardizing nutritional metrics for commercial layers. Viter holds animal science degree, MBA in industrial poultry, and also holds an MBA in business management. I welcome Viter for talk on nutrition management. Also, I correspondingly introduce Daniel Valbuena. Daniel Valbuena is the Global Technical Service Veterinarian for Highline International. He is a Colombian and received his Doctor of Veterinary Medicine and Zoo Technician degree from the University of Tolima, Colombia in 1992. In addition, he completed a Marketing Specialist degree in 2012, and in 2020, he obtained a Master's degree in Business Administration from the Catholic University of Murcia, Spain. In July 2021, Dr. Valbuena was promoted to the position of Global Manager of Technical Service. He is in charge of the technical team of Highline in the areas of health and management. Dr. Valbuena says the main objective of the Highline technical team is to recognize in advance the needs of our customers and promote the best strategies to reach in the Highline birds with the best profitability possible. Dr. Valbuena has published related articles on the management of commercial layers in different poultry magazines in Latin America and has participated as a global speaker in various seminars and technical meetings. I heartily welcome both the speakers for this webinar. Now we go ahead with the video of Highline International, followed by the performance of Highline in India by Srinivasa. Then the talks begins.
Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Hama.
Genetic excellence. Only one layer genetics company can claim this title. Only one has proven innovation and determined resolve to continuously select the next generation of birds best suited for the world's egg market. Only Highline. We are committed to invest in the long term, as much genetic progress as possible for our customers in the near term. As a genetics company, each day is a gift to achieve genetic progress for our customers to attain increased profitability, and we are accomplishing this. Generation after generation of Highline layers have higher livability and produce more saleable eggs on less feed per case of eggs. Highline International is not only the world's oldest and largest layer genetics company, but is the industry leader with a global yet local presence. We have a substantial responsibility to supply the world with top-performing layer genetics to feed a growing population with an inexpensive and nutritious source of protein, the egg. Meeting the future with confidence. Highline geneticists have made the genetic engine more powerful and efficient. We have narrowed the scope of genetic traits we analyze and ultimately use to select the next pure line generations, with the goal to achieve increased egg numbers, longer persistency of lay, optimal egg quality, the most profitable egg weight profiles, and feed efficiency. Our worldwide production capabilities in the USA, Europe, Brazil, and Southeast Asia ensure a stable and reliable supply of high-quality chicks for our customers. Highline believes in the value of giving customers access to exceptional technical expertise. Every day, our team of global and local specialists, nutritionists, and veterinarians help customers achieve the best performance from their Highline layers. The comprehensive breeding program encompasses all aspects of bird health, well-being, and performance, resulting in a well-balanced bird capable of performing in multiple commercial environments with high livability that can produce high-quality eggs with great efficiency. These improvements, combined with local technical service and sales support, a team of veterinarians, pathologists, nutritionists, microbiologists, poultry husbandry specialists, and an excellent network of distributors, secures Highline's commanding presence as a world leader in layer genetics for our customers for years to come. The future is bright with Highline. Superior genetics, unmatched customer service, innovation for the future.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Cade, President of Highline International. Sustainability is a fundamental value of Highline and drives our daily quest to develop the world's most efficient, productive egg-laying hens. Throughout our organization, we strive to leave a better, more healthy planet for the next generations while helping to feed the world today.
My name is Danny Lubritz, and I'm the Director of Research for Highline International. Sustainability is in our DNA at Highline. Since our inception, Highline geneticists have been committed to increasing rates of lay while decreasing feed consumption. We feed more people today due to increased egg yields per kilogram of feed. This improved efficiency reduces the demand for cropland and cuts down on our greenhouse gas emissions. Highline is determined to reduce its carbon footprint and is committed to helping our customers do the same.
Insight into your flock performance is critical to reach maximum genetic potential and profitability. Vision Egg, Highline's flock performance benchmarking program, identifies opportunities for your flocks with action items for improved layer performance. When you confidentially send us your flock records, we compare your records to more than 200 million layers in our database. Your Highline representative will review the report and provide recommendations for improved performance and bird health. This program, analysis, and assistance with implementation of the action items is complimentary for our customers. Vision Egg is yet another way Highline's global but local teams go above and beyond to partner with our customers to achieve the best results with their Highline varieties. Get the most from your flocks with better birds, better support, better experience, and better results. Contact your Highline representative today.
Sharon, please play the video of Srinivasa in highlighting W80 performance. So to all participants, any questions that will be answered after the presentation of both Viter and Daniel's completing the presentation of both the presenters. Thank you. Okay, now we go with the presentation of Peter.
Good to be back with our webinar series, our Srinivasa Highline webinar series. And as always, during this period of the year where the heat season is starting, we like to talk with you a little bit about some tips for heat stress. So from my side here, I'm going to talk a little bit on nutrition management for the hot season, right? So for today's presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I consider that it's the important and the most important thing, that is my Pareto rule for heat stress. We're going to see a little bit the effect of the heat stress on the laying hens, on the eggs, and the nutrient requirements. We're going to talk a little bit of the most important nutrient for heat stress. Some strategies for increasing the feed intake, for improving the feed intake. We're going to talk about some summer diet strategies in terms of ingredients, in terms of nutritional levels, ingredients to use or to avoid, and of course the It Depends session, that is our questions and answers. Then if you know me, you know that every single question I'm going to answer with It Depends, right? So let's start with today's presentation. So my heat stress Pareto. The Pareto rule, it's a rule that says that 80% of our actions, 80% of our results come from 20% of our actions. And the remaining 80% of the actions results in the remaining 80% of the results, or 20% of the results. My God, what a mess. Let's try this again. 80% of the results come from 20% of the actions, and the other 80% of the actions generate the remaining 20% of the results. Now I did it, right? So my heat stress Pareto on my 20% of the results, and sometimes that's where we are paying a lot of attention. Particle size, use of replacement from starch to oil, sodium bicarbonate, potassium salts, electrolytes, vitamin C, phytogenics, acute heat exposition, insoluble fiber, betaine, protein. So this sometimes we spend like 80% of our time seeking that, and they are important and they give us result. But we forgot sometimes that 80% of the results come from making the hens drink and eat. Okay, so if we ensure that we have the proper feed intake and the proper water intake, we're gonna have a better result, right? So what are the effects of the heat stress? One of the first effects, of course, we're gonna lose water. You're gonna get dehydrated. So we're gonna have a reduction of blood volume, the intravenous pressure. We're gonna have a reduction of the blood flow, and all of this gonna increase the heart rate. So of course, the first thing that this is gonna provide to us is an increment or increase in the maintenance energy. Our basal energy level gonna increase because of the heat stress, because of this panting and this increased heart rate. Reduction of the efficiency of the heat loss routes, and of course, the more heat, less efficient. So it's a cycle that's gonna perpetuate. So that would be the first effects. And of course, when we keep in this cycle, what's gonna happen is hyperthermia. So with hyperthermia, the first thing we're gonna see is a decreased movement and a decreased feed intake. So we have a double trouble now, because we have more nutritional requirements, but we have less feed intake. So it becomes even more problematic to feed these hens according to their needs. So that's why the production drops. Decrease in the thyroid hormones. So of course, it is going to have a huge effect on the calcium metabolism. So that's one of the reasons, not the only, but one of the reasons that why we see the actual quality deteriorating. We see a decrease in immunological response. So if we have any challenges going on in the farm that they are not affecting a normal condition, maybe the heat stress can open the doors and we can start to see the hens being affected by this heat stress or by this disease that's there. And then the hens go to the panting stage, where they're going to have respiratory alkalosis that's going to compromise the eggshell quality, and at the end of this cycle they're going to die, right? So what is respiratory alkalosis that we talk so much? I don't want to go so much for the minimal details of this, but basically is we all know that the laying hens, chickens, birds in general, they don't sweat, right? So they lose heat to panting, and panting, they're gonna lose CO2, right? Because they're gonna exhale with more frequency, so they're gonna lose CO2. This CO2, of course, you're gonna decrease the CO2 in the bloodstream. And we have bicarbonate kind of buffering system. It's called bicarbonate buffering system, where the laying hen can decrease the formation of calcium carbonate. That's this, let me find my pointer here, H2CO3, and it's gonna, this is carbonic acid, so it can change carbonic acid to carbonate and hydrogen. So when you have an increase in the pH because of the panting, you're gonna have less carbonic acid, and you're gonna have more of this carbonate being used here, sending to the kidneys to have back the hydrogen. So of course you have less possibility to produce calcium carbonate, CaCO3, that's used for the eggshell. So the consequence is you start to have some metabolic changes, and the laying hen, of course, is going to change all the priorities to become alive, to stay alive. And of course, the consequence of that, and the most obvious consequence, is decreased shell quality because of the decrease of calcium carbonate metabolization. But we also have some indirect effects because of the vitamin D, because of the trace minerals intake. All of this is going to be affected. So right, that's the important part. You have heat stress, your eggshell quality going to be bad, and it's very difficult to recover, right? Now, nutrient intake versus temperature. That's a very interesting one, because we know that all the nutrients are indirectly affected, because of course, if I have a heat stress, I decrease my feed intake, and of course I'm going to have a decreased nutrient intake in general. But energy is a nutrient that is directly affected, directly and indirectly, right? Because it's also affected by decreased feed intake, but the temperature also affects the energy requirements. So let's see how this happens. Right here, we are seeing how is the general maintenance energy level for a laying hen. So as it goes approaching the body temperature, it goes decreasing, and then you start to, when you get to heat stress, you start to increase again your level of maintenance energy, or required energy for maintenance, right? So here I have the thermal neutrality for our three main breeds, but of course then they start to increase a little bit. Now, this is the body temperature of the laying hen, and of course, if the temperature, the house temperature starts to increase, of course, the energy requirement is going to decrease up to a certain point, and then it's going to increase again. But the problem is that the energy intake starts to decrease, because of course the feed intake starts to decrease, right? So you start to have a decrease in the energy intake as the temperature of the house gonna increasing. So as I move from left to right, the temperature here is increasing. Now, the difference between the energy intake and the energy for maintenance is what we call liquid energy, right? So this is what we have for egg production, or for any production, like the dairy cow, it's going to produce milk for the system. The chicken, they're going to put muscle. The broiler chicken going to put muscle for this. So basically this difference is the liquid energy. And as my energy intake starts to get less and less, and my requirement starts to increase, we get to a point where there are inversion here, and this we call negative energy balance. So that's the point where the body starts to mobilize body reserves heavily to survive. So you have a loss of body weight, you have a loss of muscles, you have a loss of fat, you're gonna have a loss of calcium reserves in the bones. So all of this because you start to have this negative balance, right? Especially the circuits that are related to energy. Now, our solution, of course, is to stimulate the feed intake, and that's what we're going to discuss today, right? How to improve the feed intake, to improve the nutrient intake. So, of course, this is not only reformulation of diet to higher levels, but also to work a little bit with feed management, right? Now, when we are reformulating the diet, we need to remember that energy and amino acids, they not react equally for the increased levels. So let's take a look first of the partition of these nutrients inside the laying hen. Energy. About 50%, you can make ballpark 50% of the energy goes for maintenance, and about 45-50% goes to egg production, egg mass, right? As we see in here. So we are seeing body weight and egg mass utilization, and of course, when you have heat stress, you have part of this energy being deviated from this circuit to be used for thermal regulation. So that's another point. But what we need to understand is amino acids, it's slightly different. About 70 to 85%, depending on the amino acid, it is directly for daily deposition in egg, right? That's why when we have a restriction in nutrient intake, we see first the effects in egg production, in egg weight, then in body weight, because you have a very heavy deposition in terms of amino acids for these things, and for body mass, even with a reduced energy intake, we still have a bunch of nutrients going for body maintenance. So that's why they happen first. But the problem is we have a situation where if you have a decreased energy intake, part of the amino acids by catabolism gonna be changed to energy. So that's why sometimes you see that we are giving energy and we're giving amino acids, and then they are becoming, we are trying to increase our egg weight, and we are putting some amino acids, and they are not increasing the egg weight, because sometimes these amino acids are being used as an energy source if the energy is not enough, right? So that's also one of the explanations why when we have this, we see a huge decrease of egg weight and egg production, because part of the amino acids are used as an energy source during heat stress, right? So how the temperature affects the energy requirements. We have some models to predict that, and we have European models, you have Asian models, you have North American models, you have South American models. So I just chose a few of them here, and basically what I did was to average all of them, so we don't favor anyone. But basically, if you set, and all of them work pretty similarly, you have the body weight, you have the body weight gain, you have the production, you have the egg weight, both of them gonna make the egg mass, right? And then you have the temperature, the environmental temperature, and with this you're gonna have your energy requirement, that if you cross with the energy in the diet, you're gonna have your required feed intake, or if you do the opposite, if you do a desired feed intake, you're gonna have the energy levels that you need to formulate. And you have some equations for cage free, so that's kind of an initial calculation, an estimation of how many energy is needed. But we see the effect here that as the temperature increases, actually the energy goes decreasing. But as we saw there, this has a limit, right? And that's why these models, they only work until 31, 32 degrees of temperature. And this temperature, I know, is a joke for India. We can have a temperature much higher than that. but we know that the models start to fail a little bit when we start to approach the body temperature of the laying hens, that is 41 degrees, because of course we start to have a lot of changes in the energy requirements. So these models give us an idea, but they are a little bit limited, right? So now we know that with the increase of temperature, we have in general a decrease of energy requirement. But we also know that we have a decrease in feed intake. So the question is that I make for you is, so what should we do when the temperature increases? Should I decrease the energy in the diet, or should I increase the energy in the diet? And of course, you know that the answer is it depends. And let's see why it depends. Let's pick up an example here of two farms, okay? These two farms, they have different systems, different stocking densities, so that's why their flocks react in a different way when the feed intake, when the temperature increases. So you can see that in this farm, when you go from 15 to 35 degrees, you have this reduction in feed intake. And in this farm, when you go from 15 to 35 degrees, you have this reduction in feed intake, right? So now let's cross this with the changes in energy requirement. So now we made the calculation, right, for thermoneutrality. Sorry. And now we are seeing that the energy at 10 degrees, the requirement is 263 kilocalories. At 30 degrees is 280 kilocalories. And this is the reduction in feed. So this is the feed intake, 120 something at 12 degrees, or 15 degrees, sorry, and about 95 grams at 35 degrees, correct? Now let's see the same thing for farm number 2. Now farm number 2, we have the same reduction in terms of energy requirement. And here you can see that the feed intake now goes from 125, but because this farm maybe have a higher stocking density, maybe their ventilation system is not as effective. In this case, the feed intake goes to 85 grams. So what would be the effect? Let's make the calculations. So here we have temperature, feed intake, kilocalories per day. When you divide one per the other, you're going to have the kilocalories per kilo. And then you're going to have this calculation made for, so how many kilocalories per kilo you need for every single temperature. You make this calculation for farm number 1, you make this calculation for farm number 2. What would be the results? Well, farm number 1, when you go from 10 degrees to 33 degrees, you need to decrease your energy from 2770 kilocalories to 2700 kilocalories. But farmer number 2, when you have the same change in temperature, you need to go from 2650 to almost 2850 kilocalories. Of course, we are not considering here how the increased energy requirement or how the increased energy in the diet is going to affect the feed intake, because you know that it's also a cycle. So we are just talking about requirements here and not how the hens react, okay? So that's just to tell you guys that this is not a universal rule. It's not how, okay, the energy, the temperature increases, I should increase or decrease my energy in the diet. No, you have to analyze, and you have to know your farm, and you have to know how your hens gonna react to the high temperature, so you have to understand how your requirements are changed, okay? So this is energy, this is feed, but there's something that it's even more important than feed, and is this. I remember that a friend of mine from Brazil, his name is Eduardo, he used to tell me that, like this, Victor, always pay attention when you go to the chicken house, because the chicken eats 1, drinks 2, and breathes 5, right? So it's and this always helped me a lot, because I always paid a lot of attention in air quality and water quality. But I have to say that this simplification of him is not always right, because if you go and start to dig a little bit, you're gonna find that during heat stress, this 2:1 proportion of water per feed, it can go more than 5, almost 5:1 at 30 to 35. At 42 degrees, it can get to almost 8:1. So you have a completely change in water to feed intake. So my question for you guys is, are you sure that your chickens are drinking water? Do your laying hens have enough water? And I repeat, are you completely sure? Because this becomes a very, very critical situation in heat stress, because what happens is you get to a point where these hens start to need so much water, and you get the situation that sometimes you don't have nipple quality, you don't have nipple numbers, you don't have nipple flow, or if it's an open source water, it's just hot, and they start to limit the water intake. So then you start to think a little bit the opposite. Instead of drinking 5 times more than the feed intake, let's think the opposite. They're gonna eat 5 times less than the water intake. So if your water intake starts to be limited, the feed intake is gonna be limited by the water intake. So you have to pay a lot of attention in that. We have experience showing that if you don't have a good water flow capacity, you can lose almost 30% of your feed intake, simply because the birds are too thirsty, they don't drink enough water, and they are limiting the feed intake because they don't have enough water. Being in volume or being in quality, because not only the water volume is important, but the temperature as well, right? We know that if the water temperature starts to get more than 25, 27 degrees, you start to limit a lot of the feeding of the water intake, and as a consequence, the feed intake, correct? Now, when you talk about water quality, water temperature is important for sure, but we have in our management guide, if you go to the Highline management guide, you're gonna see that we have a very nice table showing the main expected results for physical chemical analysis for the water. So our recommendation is to pay attention on these points in red, to do at least twice per year the physical chemical analysis. Pay a lot of attention, especially we know that India, they have a lot of surface water sometimes, so pay a lot of attention on the amount of solids in the water. That has to be less than 1000 ppm. They're gonna have a very important laxative effect, and as well the sulfates and the magnesium that also gonna have some impact in terms of wet manure and dirty eggs, okay? But this is a very good session in our management guides, very well explained, so I would recommend you guys to take a look later at the management guides, okay? Now, moving on. Since we talk about water temperature, and this is not so much of my area, this is more on Daniel's area, and sorry Daniel for being a little bit entering in your management area here, but just to share some interesting pictures that we saw in our visits, some creative ways that we see on the field to try to keep the water temperature low. So you see some isolation of the water reservoir here, but also some insulation of the pipes with these insulating foams that helps you insulate the pipes. When you have a pipe that's going in this situation, it keeps a little bit the temperature down, but of course we know the most effective way is to dig and to have the pipes running underground, and at least if we can at least more than 70 centimeters to 1 meter to keep the really isolate from the surface, the soil surface temperature, so you can have at least 1 meter, would be a very interesting way to keep your water cool, okay, or water temperature low. Always remember that water quality, you can do a lot of stuff, but if you don't have a good maintenance of your system, cleaning, removing of biofilm, removing of mineral deposits, a lot of what you do is lost. So I don't know, we could spend a whole day talking about water quality, but let's just pay attention on this. Clean water, cold water, or cool water at least, and available in high quantity to fight heat stress, right? Now, water and feed for me are two things that you should have a daily result, a daily feed, a daily inspection. You need to understand the feed intake, you need to understand the water intake. So for me, one of the most interesting investments is to have water meters. All the farms that I'm directly related to, I incentivize them to put some water meters. We know that when you have a challenge, the water intake goes down first than the feed intake. So you have you gain a lot of speed to detect problems. And you have some farms that they don't have a proper feed intake measurement, and they do this kind of sentinel cages where they give feed, bagged feed, and you can easily hear, of course, these hens have to be on the same stocking density that the remaining of the chickens in the shed. So if one dies, you have to replace, of course. But with this, it's a good way to measure the feed intake in these houses and to have at least an idea when you don't have a good way to measure feed intake. But of course, measuring feed intake and measuring water intake, this is a must for me, right? Now, since we're talking about feed intake, we have to make these chickens eat. In heat stress is all about eating to keep the proper nutrient intake. We saw these graphs several times during my presentations, and we know that we have some cycles happening, some phases and some systems being developed in different stages of the growing development. But when we talk about making a laying hen learn how to eat, one of the first things is focus on this part. After the growing phase, starting around 10 weeks, 9-10 weeks, you need to start paying attention on energy levels, because that's the moment where the leghorns, the white varieties, they start to reduce feed intake because of the energy intake, right? We know that before that, they are not very efficient, so they kind of behave like a broiler. If you give more or less energy, they kind of limit themselves by the volumetric limitation. But after 10 weeks, if you give an energy that's too high, they're gonna limit the feed intake, right? And luckily we know that this is not a common situation in India. But just to show, this is a trial that we did in Mexico. That is a very similar situation to India. Mesh feed, high temperatures, lots of disease challenge, and we tested these different energy levels from 2,700 to 3,100 kilocalories, and we saw that the hens got to the end of the cycle with the same body weight. And as you can see, these body weights on treatment 1, 2, and 3, they were very close, and all of them below standard, because as I said, this is a place with a lot of challenge. So as I say, that's why I like, because this challenge relates a lot from what we are using in India. But we can see that the feed intake was almost 9% difference, even with the same feed intake. So this shows that they really react to the energy intake up to a certain point. So I like the way India works in terms of energy levels, because this helps us to stimulate a little bit the feed intake, right? And of course, we know that particle size is also an important point. I forgot to put this slide of particle size, but if you can put the particle size between 900 and 1200, also gonna help us to improve the feed intake. But I'm pretty sure Daniel gonna talk about this a little bit. Okay, now after we finish this growing phase here that we saw 10 weeks to pre-lay, we started the production phase, and then we have a problem. And the problem is that we know that's a very common practice in India to delay the shift into production, because we have several factors going on. Sometimes we have a delay in person to remove the spare hens. Sometimes the egg price is good and just decide not to move. So it's very common shift birds from growing farms to production farms at 17 weeks, at 18 weeks, and not at 14 or 15 as we recommend. So this has a very important impact in the uniformity, because of course you're gonna some hens, they are already starting production, and then when you shift them, it's a new feed, it's a new feeder, it's a new drinker, it's a different environment, it's a different cage, sometimes it's different chickens inside the same cage, so they will suffer a little bit in a moment that the energy requirement and the amino acid requirement is much higher than at 14 weeks, 15 weeks. So when you do this delayed shifting, you make the flocks very uneven in body weight. So this is, of course, loss of uniformity. And because of this, they're gonna have uneven conditions to fight heat stress. If you have different feed intake capacity, if you have different body weights, you have different body reserves, so the flock starts to be a little bit more sensitive to the heat stress. And also makes you lose money, right? And I'm not gonna go into details into this, but I'm just gonna give this calculation for you. This calculation is before 35 weeks of age and after 65 weeks of age, what is the price to produce an egg, okay? Here you're using 100 grams to produce an egg of feed, and here we'll use 150 grams to produce an egg. So if you are shifting, you are delaying shifting from growth to production, you are delaying the production, you are losing eggs in the moment that it's the cheapest moment and the most efficient moment to produce an egg. And of course, you are losing body reserves and you are making your flocks much less adequate for heat stress, right? So please, if we can, let's try to shift these hens, these pullets at 14 weeks, 15 weeks, no more than that, okay? And let's pay a lot of attention on what we can do in this period that is called the pre-picking moment. Pre-picking is what? From the first egg to the peak of production. And this for me is the most critical point for during the production phase, okay? It's the beginning of the production, not the end, not the middle, but the pre-picking phase. So this is not new. This is became a little bit as a trend during 2014, 2015. This is a publication from 2016 from Poultry World, saying that if you want to have a good start in the production phase, you should maximize your nutrient intake, providing a more concentrated diet. Okay, you know that. But as we said, hens react differently for energy intake and amino acid intake, right? We know that high energy, they decrease the feed intake, and the opposite. So that's why the proposition is to, if we can provide a limited amount of energy, we can help to improve the feed intake. Let's say less energy, you improve the feed intake, and you improve the amino acid intake. And as we said, the amino acid can be used as a source of energy. So the idea of pre-peak diet is diets with very high amino acid levels and slightly lower energy levels, okay? This is a trial, a very interesting trial made by Trial Nutrition, 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and showing that when you do a control diet that has everything at regular levels, enriched diet that has everything in high levels, and a pre-picking diet that has high amino acids, vitamins and trace minerals, but low energy, up to 24 weeks, you can have 4% more egg production, 2% more egg weight, 5% more egg mass, and 3.7% better feed conversion. And this is the most attractive point. And then after 25, 26 weeks, you still have some benefits, but you start to lose a little bit of the benefits. So my recommendation is, if you can do a pre-pick diet from first egg to 23, 24 weeks, is very beneficial to help you to have a good persistence of production, but to have a body conformation that's gonna help a lot to fight heat stress, okay? Remember, again, this is a very important point. We need to be able to achieve this body, especially the body weight gain from first egg to peak of production, around 16 to 20% of body weight. And this is an indication that you have enough body reserves, not only to have a good possibility to fight heat stress, but also to have a good persistence of production. So this pre-peak diet also gonna help you in different forms. You're gonna have much more persistence of production, but you're also gonna have more body reserves to fight heat stress, okay? So pay a lot of attention in that. During the pre-peak, it's not only about the nutritional levels, but you have to feed these birds more frequently and level the feeds, right? The feed levels. And I'm really happy that it's in India, it's very common to do that, so very good. You have to adjust the lighting schedule to provide more lighting during the morning, because this is the moment that they are more, let's say, active to eat, because the temperature is not so high. Just remember that the more you remove light from the second half of the day, more you're going to affect negatively the actual quality, so you need to find a balance there. And the midnight feeding is a must during pre-peak, during the heat stress, because of course you can easily add 2 to 5 grams of feed intake with the midnight feeding, because you're adding opportunity for them to eat in the moment where the temperature is much lower. So what is the midnight feeding? Then you're gonna talk about this with much more expertise, but of course is to have a moment of dark before and after, and you can have a 2 or 1 hour of lighting period here. So what you're gonna do is wake up the hens to eat at this moment, and since we have these 3 hours before and after from dark, you will not have hormonal stimulation. So just is a snack, okay? This is not a new day for them. It's just a midnight snack. So with this, you have no hormonal stimulation, and you have 2 hours more here for them to eat some feed. Of course, if you are waking up these hens to eat at midnight or whatever the time, you need to ensure that they have feed inside the feeder, right? Of course, if you don't have feed and you wake them up, you're just going to stress these hens out, okay? So just be sure that you have feed in here, correct? In terms of feeding times during heat stress, and in general, you have to always consider what is more priority. Of course, the more you move for more feedings in the morning, easier it's gonna be to have more feed intake, but also you compromise a little bit the calcium, the amount of calcium that you have available at the end of the day that's gonna be needed for shell quality. So what the companies usually do is a lot of feedings on the early hours of the day. And sorry, my camera here is it's hiding a little bit the numbers, but you're gonna have 1 or 2 full feedings on the first 2 hours of the day, and then you have to wait a little bit for them to empty the feeder, and then you can start to feed again in the afternoon to make them eat more the coarse limestone and the feed with the coarse limestone. Of course, when it starts to get hot, this is the moment where it's going to be the hottest moment of the day. So then you have to prioritize a little bit the hens to be just eating, even that you are sacrificing the actual quality, then just giving feed in the afternoon. So in this case, what you would do is shift this empty feeder moment more towards the second half of the day and give more feed in the first half of the day. Okay, so this way you improve. So the feeding times, you can shift this to also help the hens to achieve a little bit more of feed intake. But then you get to the point where you have heat stress and you have extreme heat stress. And when you have extreme heat stress, and we know that this can happen in India, you get to some point where the best strategy is simply put these birds to fast, because we know that this is proven that you can have a reduction in metabolic heat in almost 70%, from 20 to 70%, if you have the birds fasting, okay? And of course, you're gonna lose production, you're gonna lose egg weight, but this now is a game to keep your hens alive. So you have strategies up to a certain point, make them eat, stimulate them to eat, but if you get to this emergency level, then it's probably just need these birds, give them water, and don't provide feed so they can decrease the metabolic heat, okay? And now, let's talk a little bit not only about the strategies of feeding, but a little bit on the nutrition side here. You have to assume that your feed intake is going to decrease, right? So we saw that, and you know that you need to concentrate your diets a little bit. Remember, and we saw that non-energy nutrients such as protein, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, they can increase no problem in the proportion of your feed intake decreases. So let's say if your feed intake decreases 5%, you can increase these ingredients in 5-7%, not a problem. But you cannot do the same with energy, because if you increase in the same proportion, you can reduce even furthermore the feed intake. So my recommendation is do not increase. You can increase both of them, but do not increase in the same proportion. So let's say if you're going to increase your amino acids in 5%, increase your energy only in 2%. So you don't get to a cycle where your energy decrease furthermore the feed intake, correct? So increase both of them, but not in the same proportion. Remember, we always are talking about amino acids, about protein, about calcium and phosphorus, but remember to also increase the vitamins and trace minerals. So my recommendation, increase them in at least 20 to 40% during heat stress. What else can we do in terms of formulation? Vitamin A. Vitamin A is great. Actually, all the fat-soluble vitamins, they're going to have some help here. At least 800 international units per kilo is going to be very, very helpful with this unit of these stress hands. Remember, right, that you saw that we have a decreased immunological capacity during these periods. Vitamin C, if you can have 250 to 500 grams more per ton, you're going to help to reduce a lot the stress hormones. And we know that the vitamin C is one of the most efficient ways to fight heat stress in terms of ingredients to add to the feed. So very nice. Vitamin E in 65 to 250 international units. It's going to increase the feed consumption, egg size, and it's a very nice antioxidant. So it helps with the liver damage, especially if you associate this with selenium. It's going to be very interesting. Vitamin D is not here, but of course you know, right, that if you can feed a bypass form, a 25 hydroxy and 1 alpha dehydroxy, you can also help the hands to keep their shell quality. Niacin versus tryptophan, you know that we know that in low tryptophan levels, the birds, especially if they have a low niacin level as well between, they're going to become very hysterical. They're going to be super agitated. So they're going to increase even more the activity inside the cage. So if you can boost both tryptophan, let's say to 21, 23% of the lysine, and increasing 20 to 30% your niacin levels, you're going to keep the birds a little bit calmer, because both of them going to have impact on the serotonin production. Avoid using coccidiostat, especially in the carbazine during this period. Enzymes, whatever you can do to have a better digestibility, it's going to be helpful. If you have non-digested ingredients inside the gut tract, you're going to have not only intestinal problems, but you're going to increase the metabolic heat generation, the endogenous heat generation. So enzymes are going to be very helpful. Organic acid blends, you know that if you keep the pH a little bit lower, you're going to have a better intestinal quality, you're going to have a better absorption, you're going to have less metabolic heat. So especially if you associate this with probiotics, it's going to be super great. Betaine as a partial replacement of methionine, or a total replacement both of choline, a total or partial replacement of choline. I don't like to make a total replacement. I like to have both of them, but it's a super cool ingredient. It saves the laying hands of some metabolic steps to donate methyl radicals. So it's cool, it's good to use. Said probiotics, especially use organic acids, and prebiotics. Some hepatoprotectors, they are always very helpful. Silimarin is a very common. Dandelion, artichoke, especially if you associate artichoke with vitamin E, it's a very nice hepatoprotector plus antioxidant, okay? And we cannot talk about additives without talking a little bit of the phytogenics. We know that many places are reducing what we can use in terms of drugs, in terms of antibiotics. So we are starting to understand a little bit more and more the phytogenics. So I put here for me the 6 that I think that are the most common in use currently, and how they can help for the heat stress. So garlic, that has some organosulfurated compounds. It's gonna be both important for gut health and immunological function, because it has both antimicrobial and immunomodulatory functions. Oregano, that has this carvacrol, that it's a kind of a natural antibiotic, especially for respiratory diseases. You know, right, that when you have a flu, you have a cold, if you have garlic, helps a lot. Oregano, it helps a lot. And garlic as well, cinnamon, you have cinnamaldehyde, that's a very cool antioxidant and also has some anti-inflammatory functions. So it's becoming very popular in humans as well. So for heat stress, I guess makes a lot of sense for heat stress. Ginger, we know this, we even have human drinks with ginger, right? For that gives a feeling of cooling down. This is mainly because of these phenolic and terpene compounds that help us not only to the anti-inflammatory antioxidants, but kind of lose a little bit of metabolic heat. So have a direct impact on improving the immunological function and decreasing the heat stress. So ginger is super nice for heat stress. Turmeric, and I guess India is the capital, because of course this is the active principle for curry. So the curcumin, it is very potent anti-inflammatory, and that's why in India people are very healthy, because they use a lot of curcumin. So decrease a lot the inflammation and the oxidative stress. And rosemary, that has the rosmarinic acid, that's a very potent antioxidant, so decrease a lot of the oxidative stress. So all of this helps a lot. If you can add them, of course they have a cost, but they are proving to be more and more helpful in these situations. When reformulating, don't forget to change your sodium, potassium, and chloride proportion. This is your Monjan that we say, right? The Monjan balance. That should be, if you have potassium available, you could be around 250 milliequivalents. If you don't have potassium, probably you're gonna be around 220. So you have the equations here from CVB and the electrolyte, the electric balance from North America and South America. They use this, the Monjan equations. So you can see here the values. You have basically an addition to a certain potency of sodium and chloride, and potassium and a reduction in the chloride here. So you're gonna have these nutrients here, and I can share this with you guys, okay? But basically you have this level 200 and 250 would be ideal if you have potassium available. If you don't have potassium, probably this number is gonna be on low 200s or even 180. So this is gonna be around 220. And the reason I say if you have potassium available, potassium is a controlled substance for the army. It's used for drug productions. So it's not every single country that you can easily use potassium salts, okay? But very important to keep, if you're using CVB, around 25, if you're using Monjan, about 250 milliequivalents. For me, in terms of reformulation, this is one of the critical points. Remember that carbohydrates and protein generate much more metabolic heat than fat. So you need to replace part of your energy source from grains to fat, to oil, okay? The more oil you have in a diet, replacing starch, more you're gonna control your endogenous heat production, okay? Of course, the more oil you add to the diet, more sometimes you have to use some fillers. So you ending up increasing a little bit the amount of fiber that you have in the diets. So if you're using fiber, remember to keep to at least 90% of insoluble fiber, because this is the kind of fibers that will decrease a lot of the metabolic heat generation as well. Okay, so guys, this was a little bit of the summary. Of course, we can stay the whole day here discussing strategies for heat stress in terms of nutritional strategies, but I guess this summarizes a little bit the main points, and I'm gonna be open to questions, okay, after Daniel's presentation. Thank you, and talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for your detailed presentation of
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy for being here today, sharing time, talking about the heat stress condition and the impact of heat stress on layers' health and performances, and the potential mitigation strategy, especially with the Indian egg producer attendees today, that we know this is a very, very critical and sensitive point in this part of the time. Currently, environmental issues, food biosafety and animal welfare are the three biggest challenges for poultry production in the global. And heat stress is one of the major environmental stressors in the poultry industry, resulting in substantial economic loss. We can see here, for example, for India, the average high and low temperature, the budget in this year 2023, now for May and June, still July, we are waiting the peak about the temperature, the heat temperature in Indian country. We can see here, for example, in May, we can wait to find temperature close to 48, 49, 47 degrees Celsius. In June, it's the same situation, 48, 47, 46 degrees Celsius is the heat wave across India. And in situation when we have open house system, so it's very critical, but it's not only to the India, because we see in this world map, we can see that it's the recurrent situation from the tropical countries. Tropical countries, for example, Latin America, like Mexico, Dominican Republic, Caribbean countries, Colombia, Brazil, Africa, Middle and Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia countries like Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Gulf countries like Saudi, for example, and part of the China, sure. So this is a global sensitive point that we need to talk always the recurrent way throughout our webinars, our meetings. The thermoregulation of the laying hens, we can see that the thermoneutral zone specifies the range of ambient temperature where energy requirement is minimal and constant between 18 to 25 degrees Celsius. But we don't talk about the heat stress, we can talk also about the cold stress, but cold stress is more early chicks, the first 1 to 3 weeks of age. But in this case, we will spend time talking about the heat stress in layers. And heat stress is a condition where chickens are unable to maintain a balance between body heat production and heat loss. Some theoretical points about the heat stress. High environmental temperature affect the layer's health and performance by cause of heat stress. Heat stress affecting production in poultry can be divided mainly in two types according to their severity and duration, acute and chronic. Acute heat stress is drastic heat exposure in a short time, acute signs. And chronic heat stress is prolonged and sustained staying in the time. So the consequences of the severity can be varied. Just to remember, because all about you know what about the signs of the heat stress, but we need to remind what about that. One of the more important signs is about the panting and rapid breathing. Look out for panting, beaks open, and rapid breathing as beginning signs of heat stress. We can see in this picture that I need to say, Dr. Ravindran, thank you very much for sharing with us this picture and several pictures that we will show in this presentation, the local picture, because it's very important to get more local support to our attendees today. Thank you again, Dr. Ravindra. During the heat stress condition, the baby will increase their breathing from 37 breaths per minute to 250 breaths per minute. Pale cone and waterless. Heat dissipation throughout the waterless and cone kind of make the skin color to paler. Wings outstretched and feathers erect. The birds hold their wings away from their body to release trapped heat and to allow airflow against their skin. More longing, less roaming. Birds may roam less and not move around as much in general. Stop eating and drinking. Appetite is depressed by 1.5% of each degree of temperature rise above 20 degrees Celsius. Diarrhea presentation. Extra water that a chicken consumes during the hot weather can lead to watery diarrhea. Decreasing egg production in control layer studies was determined that egg production dropped by 13.2% and 26% respectively for heat stress periods of 8 to 14 days and 30 to 42 days. Droppings and lethargy. Droppings and lethargy are precursors to heat stroke, which is a very, very serious condition. What about the effects of heat stress? The first one is the behavioral changes. Spend less time feeding, more time drinking, painting, less moving or walking, wings elevate, cannibalism. What about the performance and nutrition? In terms of the productive performance and nutrition, loss in body weight, lower egg production, as you can see in the graph. It is the typical graph for the heat stress period. Lower egg weight affect the egg quality, reduce the feed efficiency, and decrease the feed intake. If decrease the feed intake, then we will have chronic or consequence of chronic heat stress, like significantly reduced dietary protein intake, affects the feed digestibility, especially of lipids and protein, and change in fecal microbial profile. Mineral balance. Acute heat stress acid-base balance is altered, which interferes with calcium absorption at the duodenal level. It increases the respiratory rate, leading respiratory alkalosis. Formation of the HL is reduced, affecting its quality and thickness. And the ionic imbalance predisposes to the deterioration of the skeleton system. What about the immune system? The heat stress has an impact in young poultry, causing suppression of white blood cells and increase the erythrophilic lymphocyte ratio, reduce the number of antibodies produced in chickens, promote high morbidity and mortality in case of infectious disease. It can affect the vaccination process, since effective immunization is not achieved. And the prevalence, please pay attention, the prevalence of disease, such as Newcastle disease, infectious bursa disease, is relatively higher during the summer season in tropical countries. Besides this, the size of immune-related organs, such as the spleen, thymus, and lymphoid organs, are also regressed in the heat stress burn. Mortality. In acute cases, increase the percentage of mortality due to suffocation, and in chronic cases, increase the percentage of mortality due to immunosuppression. And in reproductive physiology, the heat stress affects its functionality since it causes oxidative stress in the ovarian follicles, increased molecular and induced apoptosis in liver cells with a similar severity to mycotoxins. Sex hormones such as plasma, progesterone, testosterone, and estradiol were also found to be lowered in heat-stressed births. On the slide to talk about the thermoregulation of the hen. I know that you had saw this slide several times previously, but so I don't want to spend long time to talk about that, only to mention that the thermoregulation of the hen is throughout the radiation, the conduction, the convection, and the more important, but the more critical is about when the bird use the evaporative cooling, because in this moment the water evaporating from the bird is for throughout the painting or throughout the cooler falader, but they have negative effects. For example, negative effects of painting. The water loss from the respiratory tract, so the birds begin with respiratory alkalosis, reduce the activity of carbonic anhydrase, reduce the calcium and carbonate ions transferred to the shell gland. The shell gland reduces the secretion of calcium carbonate, and then we will have thin and weak edges. Okay, no more theoretical points. Always with Victor, we like, okay, the theoretical point is very important, the concept is very important to have clear in our mind, but more important for this kind of meetings, for this kind of webinars, is about the suggestion. What is the best suggestion, the best comment, the best recommendation that you can bring for your farms, you can apply on the field, and you can solve the situation inside the farm. Because if you can solve a minimal part the problem about the heat stress, you can save the life a lot of birds. If you can save the life these birds, you can get more table eggs for sale, more income, more profitability. So it's very important. Please put attention in the following slides. It's more didactic slides, picture, photos, videos, etc. The first one is about the management, the water management. We can set this video while I am talking about the water management, providing 3 to 4 times the average daily amount of water on water just comparing both should be always approved of fresh water.
Abra la llave.
During the period of high environmental temperature,
Ahora esa.
amount of the water is
Eso.
Water flow be greater than 70 milliliters per minute per nipple. Please, gentlemen, please double, triple check what about the water flow in your nipples. The water flow should be in heat stress period no less than 70 millimeters per minute per nipple. Cut the flush out throughout the day to slow down any heating in standing water. It's helpful to cool the drinking water by flushing line in the afternoon. The drinkers must be systematically checked to make sure they are all working. Don't forget to routinely check water filters and replace them as needed. Adding vitamins and electrolytes to the drinking water helps replace lost sodium, chloride, potassium, and bicarbonate, but they are best administered before the development of extreme heat. Is to give so early in the morning. No unknown, no in the heat stress moment. Double checks about what about the water filters. Please add dye to water like cleaning products to assure it is in the system or completely removed before the heat stress period is coming in. One more topics about the water management. Drinking water from overheated water tanks can be cold or exposed to direct sunlight. This water tank should be a light color, insulated, and covered to avoid direct sunlight. Water tanks are ideally placed inside the house or underground. Still, you can add ice to the heater tanks. It's very useful practice. Insulate water tanks. Very, very successfully practice. Also, the water tank inside the house to keeping the water cool is successful as well. Gentlemen, the message in this slide is we must cover the water tanks. Doesn't important about the materials. It doesn't matter. The message is we must cover the water tanks. Example, other example, other example, very good examples. Very good examples. I think the picture is from India. This picture is from Colombia. The roof cooling. This is the paper illustration, but now we will see the real life illustration. But the principle is we need to roof cooling, we need to use the foggers, we need to use the fans, but let's see. Cooling the house, we need to use foggers and mister and run for 2 minutes every 10 minutes. Fog in the outlet air using roof sprinkler. That is the video. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Ravina, for this very, very nice video about that. Clean the house, use foggers, again, and mister, run for 2 minutes, every 10 minutes. The idea is to mix, not irrigate, and use when humidity is less than 60%. If you use foggers with the humidity is more than 60%, the consequences is terrible, it's total negative. So to use the fogger is very important, but we need to keep in mind the humidity should be less than 60%. See the other video. And the third one here. Very, very nice video. Cooling the house, you can cover the roof with shade netting. You can see in this picture. Roof covered with touches. Simple, practical. Other picture. Simple, practical, economic, cheaper, no expensive. Other good illustration. No expensive, very practical. Curtain management. The use of the porous window shades block direct sunlight from entering the house, but, please pay attention, but allow air to pass through. This is in Colombia, picture. I think this is in Central America, picture also. For the other target, the curtain management is sunlight should not shine directly on the birds. Use window shades to block the sunlight. Other picture from India about what kind of curtain management they are using in this farm. And it's only to show how it should be the proper open house design for reducing the heat stress. We need to have open roof ride allows of air to rise and exit the house, roof insulation, sufficient roof overhang here, the foggers, the fan, window shades. Local grass around houses will be cooler than background and radiate less heat into the house. And orient the house on its west axis to minimize the solar heat. And this very important point, please. Remove the manure to improve ventilation and remove heat source. This is the house design in open side houses in Colombia. In a hot place, it's maybe almost 40 degrees Celsius in summer. Here, provide rich vents and roof level to allow hot air to exit so that the fresh air may enter the house through side open. And the second point to see here is the roof should have an overhang to reduce an indirect sunlight getting near the house. Minimum overhang of 0.6 meters is recommended. What about the roof insulation? It's a common practical. I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know if in India it's a common practice to use. But the roof insulation, insulate roof, reduce the radiation and conduction of solar heat through the roof to the interior of the house. In Latin America, we are using this kind of product. For example, it is the description, this product say this is a flexible white acrylic roof coating that expands and contracts with the roof movement. This coating helps in the reduction of interior temperature as it builds a barrier against water and reflects the sun heat and UV rays. Basically, this product has ceramic particles that reflect sun rays and prevent the heat from passing to the interior. Generation savings, electric energy consumption, and comfort. Okay, I know in India maybe you are using that frequently. This is a test that a bigger customer in Mexico, they did maybe 5, 6, or 7 years ago in open house when they applied 4 liters of product in 1 specific part, the roof, and covered a surface of 9 square meters, obtaining a yield of 2.25 square meters per liter. This is the white waterproofing. What was the result? The result says with this roof insulation, the white waterproof temperature was 49 to reduce the 49 to 44, and with no white waterproofer, the temperature was between 62 to 64 degrees Celsius. So it's almost between the difference between 12.5 Celsius degrees to 18 degrees Celsius. This is the explanation, the paper document, no roof insulation, you can get 65 degrees, 54, 45, and 35 to the layers, to the hands, with no roof insulation. When you have insulation of roof, in the same layers, you can get 27 degrees Celsius. Big difference, right? Feeding management. The feed should be given to the birds in a cooler part of the day, early morning and in the late evening from 40 past 4 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. 5:30 a.m. The bird should not be fed in the middle part of the day. It shouldn't happen in the middle part of the day. We need to promote at noon to have empty feeders, because we don't need to increase the metabolic temperature at noon, because high environment temperature, high metabolic temperature, and at the same time in the peak of the temperature of the day, the consequence is the death. The consequence is high mortality at the end of the day. Sure, to improve the feed intake in heat stress condition, we need to use the midnight feeding. We need to initiate the program by turning lights on for 1-2 hours in the middle of the dark period. There must be at least 3 hours of dark before and after the midnight feeding, and midnight feeding can be removed after the preclusion. We can remove after the heat stress period, 50 minutes every week again. But it's very, very important, very critical, very successful practice to do. Obviously, if the lights are available in your farms. Other point, avoid use of excessive fine feed particles. In heat stress is the more terrible situation in terms of the feed that birds can have. Fine feed particles. We need to promote the optimal feed particle profile. It seems, or it means, maybe 35% between 1 to 3 millimeters, 20%, no more than 20% of fines, and maybe 5% the particular size more than 3 millimeters. This is a very, very nice management schedule during the times of the heat stress. You can see here, between 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., no feeding, to make drinking water flush between 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., only feed so early in the morning and later in the afternoon. You use the midnight feeding on midnight lit light. The manure management in traditional houses, we need to remove the manure to improve the ventilation in cage. The bacterial decomposition contributes to the increased heat load inside the house. We need to have clean, very clean, the house inside. The combustion, the manure, increase the inside temperature in the house, increase the heat stress. Avoid alone. Surroundings. The grass of short vegetation will largely avoid the reflection of the sun rays inside the house. Remove unneeded metal objects from around the house that could radiate heat into the open house. I think it's the last part of my presentation about the air movement. We need to increase the movement of air in open houses with steel fans. Ensure a minimum velocity of 1.8 to 2 meters per second in the berth areas. Is how to placement of fans in open houses. We can have for this paper document graph 2 fans, 30 48-inch fans, the foggers, and the distance between the fans. If the fans have 92 centimeters of diameter, it should be 15 meters between the fans, and the distance the foggers should be maybe 1 meter between the foggers. Guys, if you have fans into the house, please make the maintenance, constantly maintenance, especially before to start the heat stress period. Provide adequate air exchange by ensuring all fans are properly maintained. Maximize fan function by cleaning fan blades, lowers, and hoses at least once a week during the hot winter season. It's the other point, very, very critical point. The transfer moment in the heat stress period. The transport the birds should be early in the morning or at the night. Place fewer birds per transport crate and have empty crates on the truck to allow space for ventilation around the birds during the move. And please, you need to have enough people to do this operation as soon as possible, because we need to wait the heat stress period in the day and still are working placing the bird after the transfer or during or in the transfer day. So we need to have a lot of people doing this practice. The relationship between vaccination and heat stress. Now, sure, we need to postpone vaccination during periods of heat stress whenever possible. Heat stressed birds have decreased in immune function and may not respond as well to vaccination. Other point, avoid overcrowding. Each hen's natural body heat is multiplied by all its flock mates' body temperature as well. You have overcrowding in heat months, heat stress period, sure, your mortality will be increased a lot. Sure, your challenges for heat stress will be more critical challenges. So please pay attention with stock density. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, conclusion. The conclusion can be a lot conclusion or can be a singular conclusion, and the key conclusion. And for me, I prefer the key conclusion. And the key conclusion should be the key to minimizing the effects of heat stress is anticipating periods of high environmental temperatures and implementing appropriate management and nutritional measures prior to the rise in temperature. Don't forget, in this moment or in any time, stay checking our Highline webpage. In this webpage, you can find our technical update. And we have, for the heat stress, and very complete technical update. This is the title, Understanding Heat Stress in Layers, the management tips to improve hot weather flow performance. This is the web direction, web address you can consult. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention. I'm sorry, I don't know how the pronunciation is. Pakul Danjabat. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Now we are open to question and answer discussion. And I hope with this short but practical message, as I mentioned with the start the presentation, I hope you can bring 2 or 3 topics that you can implement in your farms, in your operation, in your houses, to improve the performance in Highline WAT during the heat stress period. In India, in Southeast Asia, Latin America, Gulf country, everywhere. Thank you very much. See you next time, guys.
Thank you, Daniel, for your detailed presentation. Also, thank you, Peter, on your presentation. Earlier, now, the session is ready to take off the questions.
Very nice, Dr. Hama. Very good attendance. We had almost 150, and we see a lot of questions coming in, right? And before starting the questions, I see a lot of the questions are regarding the presentation. And in every single presentation or every single webinar that we do, we keep the recording of the webinar available in our webpage. And for sure, Srinivasa also gonna upload this in the social media. So you're gonna have the full content of this webinar available to watch many times again. Okay, so yes, it will be available, the recording of the webinar, correct? Okay.
Victor.
Yes, Daniel.
I'm sorry, no, only to mention that in our panelists, we have Dr. Princess Cortez and Dr. Santana, and they are our Southeast Asia technical team, and they have a lot of experience in managing about the heat stress. So they have the capability to give answer and to support to us in the question and answers also.
Yes, that's a good point, Daniel. And we always say in highlighting that we are global yet local, but that's the main point. It's glad to have here Princess and Santana that are our technical team for an area that's also very challenging in terms of temperatures, such as Southeast Asia. And for sure, they're gonna have some experience to contribute. So please, Princess and Santana, whoever you want to jump in and add to our comments, okay? Starting with the questions, how do you want to do this, Dr. Noah? Should I read the questions or do you want to do it?
Yeah, I will do it.
Okay.
The first question, which is there is Dr. Suhail. He asked, what are the highline layer pre-layer specifications?
What's the question? What's the layer and pre-layer specifications?
Yeah, for highline layers, highline varieties.
Yes. So the nutritional levels, we have a particular guide for India that differs a little bit from the global management guide, but more in the production phase. So the growing phase is quite similar, but more than talking about the specific levels, Dr. Hama, I would like to say the purpose of this. And the purpose of these management levels are this nutritional level, sorry, is to achieve some specific goals. And the first one is achieve the proper body weight as fast as possible and keep achieving these body weights up to 12 weeks. And after that, do not let the pullets overcome the maximum body weight in more than 3%. We know that we have, it's a very common situation in India, to have a compensatory body gain after 12 weeks. So you need to control your late growing phase diets in a way that you do not let them become overweight or have a compensatory body weight gain. Otherwise, this is going to have the fatty liver issues. That is one of the very good questions that I was reading here, and we're going to go a little bit more in deep. And your pre-lay diet, the main purpose of this is to make a smooth transition from the growing phase to the production phase, introducing the coarse limestone, introducing gradually higher levels of calcium, so the heads can start to get used to these levels without compromising the feed intake, but also giving a little bit more of substrate for them to fulfill the medullary bones during this period. So what I would say is don't pay so much attention on the specific levels on the management guide. They are just a starting point, but analyze what is happening at your farm and adapt the management guide to this reality.
Yeah, we move on to next an important question from Mr. Kanchan Rao. Being high percentage of open sheets in India, at times it's beyond the control of the farmer to achieve optimum body weights by 12 to 13 weeks. And afterwards, between 13 to 15 weeks, and for unknown reasons, at times, there used to be marginal increment in scheduled body weights, which will be later achieved in shorter period than prescribed. In this type of flocks, we are experiencing significant mortality on account of fatty liver and fatty liver hemorrhagic syndrome from around 40th week onwards. Can you suggest any managemental or nutritional remedy to overcome this problem?
Super great question, Dr. Hama. I will take a lead on the nutritional part, and I'm gonna ask Daniel to complement on the management side. And this is a very common situation that we saw in India, especially during the hot season now, that is a struggle to achieve the body weight of 12 weeks. Then we have this transition period, and between 15 and 17 weeks, we have a very high compensatory body weight gain. And this, of course, generates this fatty liver hemorrhagic syndrome. So again, for the nutritional side, and that's you're gonna see on our management guide that you have a huge range of energy in the management recommendations globally, and this is not different from India. So you can change these energy levels in more than 300 kilocalories, depending on the body weight situation and feed intake situation, and of course temperature. So again, do not feed high energies to this period, and pay attention so you don't let these birds, if they are, let's say, at minus 5% at 12 weeks, and you go to plus 10% at 17 weeks, this is very bad. So you have to keep to the same body weight difference to the minus 5%, but you invest in uniformity, okay? So in terms of nutrition, you have to change your levels and even manipulate sometimes a little bit the feed access without compromising the uniformity in order to achieve that. But there's some tips of management that I'm pretty sure Daniel gonna add to it.
No, Victor, fully agree with you. We cannot to promote to achieve the body weight in the last 2-3 weeks of the pullet's time, because in this part the growing, we are not promoting for muscle. In this part, we are promoting to grow the fat. So we need to start to promote the correct body weight in the early periods, and we can use, especially between 6 to 10 to 11 weeks, strategies like midnight feeding. If we have in our flock low feed intake, we can implement the midnight feeding strategy that we can use in laying hens also. That for me and for all white and brown varieties, we can push for more for optimal body weight in the first 10 weeks of age. And then after 11, 12 weeks of age, we can start to have the maximum standard body weight. So the other point to try to get the correct body weight early is to give the proper diet in the proper period, not change the diet for the week, change the diet regarding to the body weight in every step, in every period during the growing phase. But please, not looking to achieve the body weight, the standard, in the last 2-3 weeks of finalizing, ending the pullet period.
Thank you. We move on to the next question. Hope the earlier question was answered. What is the safe minimum inclusion level of soya for optimum performance? And there are two questions: is what is maximum level of FFA in oil is beneficial for the birds?
Okay, that's very good questions, Dr. Hama. The safe minimum inclusion level of soya is 0, but it depends on how you get there. Remember that there's a lot of countries that they don't use any soybean. So yes, it's totally possible to have a production with 0 soybean meal. The problem is that it's very difficult to change from a diet with soybean meal to a diet without. Laying hens is all about routine, guys. So when you change is the problem. So if you start with a diet with very low or no soybean meal, they're going to be fully adapted. But if you have if you're struggling to have soybean meal and want to remove, it has to be very, very gradual, very slow. So changing levels with the same raw material is not a problem. If you keep the same levels but change the raw material, is very tough on the laying hens. So what I would say is, if you do it gradually and if you compensate the amino acids properly, you can decrease a lot. Of course, you would have need different sources of protein, right? I don't know, canola, barley, sunflower, any kind of high pro vegetables that you could find. You can use as a source like high concentration, like this corn, corn, concentrated forms of corn that has more protein. Forgot the name now, sorry. But there's different sources of alternative protein, and you can use that. But the problem is, as I said, any change in the amount of soybean meal, it should be done very smoothly and gradually, so you don't affect the production. Okay, and you always have to compensate the amino acids with alternative sources and synthetic amino acids. Now, Dr. Hama, the maximum levels of oil, free fatty acids or vegetable oils, you have to think about minimum and maximum. First of all, you guys know me, and I talk to this about with all of you, and you know that's not so popular in India, but I don't like diets without oil. For me, every diet should have a minimum amount of oil, regardless the energy requirement, because this helps with the quality. And you know how liver is important, especially in longer cycles. So for me, I start with the minimum. For me, every diet should have at least 1% of oil. All of diets. We should have no diets without oil. Okay? But the maximum amount of oil depends a lot on your system, depends a lot on the mixing that you have. For example, MASH diets, you start to have problems with more than 5-6% of oil inclusion. They start to cake. If you have, depending on the distribution system, you start to cake. If you have pelleting diets, if you have a post-pellet injection, you can easily go to more than 10-12%. So I guess the limitation is your system and the consistency of the feed. And of course, the more oil you have and the higher the temperature you have, more prone you're gonna be to oxidation. So you also need to pay attention on that. But for the lean hens, with post-pellet feed, you can go to more than 10%.
Okay, thanks, Victor. We move on to the next question. In case of panting, how much energy is required to evaporate 1 gram of water through panting in poultry?
Yeah, this is a physical question, not a poultry question, right? So I had to Google, to be honest, because I had no clue. And it's about 2 grams of evaporation with 1 kilocalorie. So it's about 2 per 1. So if you say 540 calories or 0.5 kilocalories, but that's not the point for me. The point for me is how much your kilocalorie requirements increases during heat stress, not how much water you need for painting. And of course, this is one of the causes that increments, because you increment painting and you increment the water evaporation, but also as the environmental temperature achieves the body temperature, you have a sudden change in the energy requirement of the bird. And you know that India, with the coastal AP area, with the 47, 48 degrees, with high humidity, it's super challenging. So more of this, I get more than the water evaporation, you need to pay attention on the general energy requirements. And as we said during the presentation, how much your feed intake is decreasing together with this possible increase in energy requirements. That's the challenging part, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. And we move on to the next question. What is the right pH for drinking water in all seasons?
Thank you, Doctor, for this question. The right pH should be between 5 to 6 pH, the water in different seasons, because with this pH, we can control the growing, the no benefic pathogens in the intestinal. So we need to have a proper nutrients absorption throughout the intestine. We need to ensure the good health, the good intestinal health. It demonstrates in different papers, in different literature, when we can have the pH in the water between 5 to 6 is a good pH to control, and a good pH to the chlorine system can work the better way. So this is the pH that should we have in our water.
Thanks, Daniel. We move to the next question. How to predict energy requirements in open side house system?
Yeah, so we have several models for this, Dr. Hama, and during my presentation, there was one slide where I was exactly showing how the temperature affects the energy requirements. We saw that we have several equations in that slide, the European equations, the South American equations, the North America equations, the Chinese and Japanese, and some other parts of Asia equations. So there's a lot of prediction models that will predict the energy requirement, but basically all of them are going to be variations of the same. That is a consequence of body weight, current body weight that affects maintenance, body weight gain that also affects the maintenance, and egg mass, and of course the local temperature. So all of these, you're going to have different weights for this, but when you put all of them together, you can start to predict how much is going to be your energy requirement. And of course, it's the only nutrient that has a direct impact of the temperature.
Thanks. Next question: at what environmental temperature the thyroid organ function affected?
Nice one.
Another poultry, like vegetarian poultry question. For sure, in the comfort zone that should be between 22, 26 degrees Celsius. This is the better, but not only the thyroid, all different system inside the bird should work good. Different some papers report, for example, during the growing period, when the temperature in the long time is less than 10 degrees Celsius or more than 30 degrees Celsius, system or gland like thyroid is affected and the growing is poor. So the answer for sure is the comfort zone, and the comfort zone is between 22 to 26 degrees Celsius.
Thanks, Daniel. Cause and control of egg picking and cannibalism with nervous behavior.
There's several of them. I will talk a little bit on the nutritional side. Daniel, you can take over on the management side. Egg picking, first you need to understand the cause of that, right? And the same thing for cannibalism. You need to understand if it's cause of the problem, if it's a consequence of the problem. And all of them can be interrelated, right? If you have a nervous behavior, you can have cannibalism. And if they learn to pick the bird, they're going to have the eggs with blood. If this happens, you can have egg picking, so it can be all interrelated. In terms of nutrition, when you have high levels of protein, it's very common to have nervous behavior. When you have unbalanced protein to energy levels, you can have a nervous behavior. If you have sudden changes in the nutritional levels, you can have this behavior. And of course, the hens can start to pack other birds or eggs because of lack of any specific nutrients that they have, but especially in terms of minerals and some amino acids. So you need to understand nutritionally what's happening and what's generating that and what is cause and what's consequence. So sometimes you have the packing as a consequence of the behavior. Sometimes you have as a behavior as a consequence of the packing, and address what's generating what. But nutritionally, there's the causes, and there's a lot of things that you can do to remediate as well in terms of nutritional levels, in terms of some feed additives, in terms of, I don't know, like chromium picolinate can help, high levels of tryptophan can help, some changes in the particle size of the diet can help. So there's a lot of things you can do for helping these in terms of nutrition. And for sure, Daniel has some to add in terms of management.
Yes, in terms of management, the nervous behavior can be promoted, especially for high stock density, for example, for the problems with the feed and distribution. So in the same case, we can have the dominant birds and dominate birds. And we can have problem with the feeding distribution. Always the dominant bird will have more feeding tank with more different raw materials inside the feed. And the dominant birds, they can have insufficient nutrient intake, and they can develop the nervous behavior, and we can promote to picking the egg picking, the feather picking, etc. High light intensity, sure, promote. So with the importance to use the proteins. The other point for sure, the heat stress condition. If we don't have the proper water flow in the moment that the birds need to drink more water, we can promote this kind of behaviors, the daily behaviors, and then promote the egg picking and the feather picking, etc.
Thank you, Victor and Daniel. Next question is, arginine levels being increased in summer for immunomodulation and feed intake. Lysine and arginine ratio is important in summer stress. It's both of them. It's two questions.
Yeah. You guys know what's going to be my answer. It depends. And Princess, I saw you turn your camera on. Do you want to take this one?
The next question, Victor.
Yeah. I'm asking if Princess want to take this one or. Okay, I'm gonna go starting and Princess. Yeah, please, Princess.
No, I think Victor, you have better answer on this. I have
Okay.
no experience
So
on this.
yeah, you can complement my question later. But in my opinion, yes and no. Yes, because arginine is important. It has a crucial role in terms of amino acid and protein metabolism. So if you don't have enough arginine, you're gonna have a lack of absorption of amino acids and proteins. But also arginine has it's a vasodilator, right? So if you don't have enough arginine, you lose a little bit the vasodilatation, and you lose a little bit the capacity of fighting the heat stress. So that's the yes part. The no part is Indian diets, they are based on corn soybean meal, that in general, these diets have excesses of arginine levels. So when you move for diets that has less corn and soybean meal, let's say if you have a huge amount of DGS, if you have a huge amount of rice byproducts that we know that we have in India as well. So in these cases, it would make more sense to add. But in general situation, I would say no, because this is going to answer the second part of the question. The proportion is very important. We even know that there's a antagonism between arginine and lysine. If you have excess of one, it can affect the other. But in general, for example, I would say 104, 105%. That's what we have in the management guide. It's the ideal ratio. And if you go with diets based on corn and soybean meal, you can easily have more than 115%. So in this case, I say you wouldn't need. But for sure, the lack of arginine is a problem. Okay, you want to add anything to this, Princess, that you are doing in Southeast Asia?
I think you pointed out correctly, Victor, because mainly most of the diets is corn and soybean based. So mostly the arginine is already very high. So that's why in Southeast Asia, that's a common issue. We don't have problem with the arginine levels meeting the requirements.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Victor and Princess. We go to the next question. Is there any relation to increased temperature to increased picking problems?
Yes, in terms of packing and sorry.
No, please go on. Please.
No,
In terms
Princess,
of packing and cannibalism, I believe that this is triggered by accumulative stress. You know, it's the same with human. When we get stressed, we get agitated because we have a lot of stress. And for the birds, they are in the cage, so they cannot do anything. What we can provide them is an optimal environment. And of course, with the stress, the temperature that we have here in our region is inevitable. It's always very hot. And one thing that we always do to prevent pecking is do the proper debeaking. For an open-sided housing, we have to do a bit of a heavy treatment for the beak treatment, so that if we did not do the proper treatment for the beaks, they have a weapon. So that could really cause a lot of mortality once they are stressed with the temperature. And as Daniel and Vitor mentioned, those light, very bright light intensity, that could also really trigger, and the stocking density that are very tight. And as Daniel mentioned in his presentation, the birds are in the cage are already close to each other, and that could inhibit, add to the body heat that they're feeling based on the external temperature that we have. So that's why all of the prevention that we need to do, proper beak treatment and providing the at least optimal environment for the birds, that would definitely help to prevent. And other thing that I think that could trigger pecking is also prolapse. Once they have this prolapse, once they taste some blood, it will be like a wildfire. It will start, and it will very difficult to stop. So it's all about prevention. That's my point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Princess. Any comments, Victor and Daniel, to add, or we go into the next question? I think we move on to the next question. How to reduce calcium pimple on egg after 50th week? Hairline crack or star crack after viral infection? And how to improve egg shell quality in very hot summer? What feed additive required? So it's multiple questions in all.
Nice. Okay, in one word, how to reduce calcium pimple on egg after 50 weeks? If I have to answer in one word, would be prevention. When we start to have problems, we failed, and then it's become more expensive and less effective to fix. So the calcium pimple, you have to manage your calcium and phosphorus ratios in a good manner, and you have to have enough nutrients in terms of trace minerals and vitamins to absorb both of them in the proper quantity. And the same thing for anything related to egg shell quality. So when you start to have a disbalanced absorption of the calcium and phosphorus, if you're gonna start to have this uneven condition to absorb in one of them, you can start to have these calcium pimples. So in my opinion, it's prevention, it's understanding the quality of your raw material, the quality of your limestone, the quality of your source of phosphorus, the digestibility of them, the intestinal quality, and work in a preventive manner, in my opinion. Hairline crack, and star crack after viral infection. For sure, it's very common because we have a very deprived condition to absorb nutrients, and have a very low nutrients reserves. So I like to make some boosts whenever you have some disease in terms of vitamin and trace minerals, some B complex vitamins, D3 levels, especially the metabolites of D3. I like to do that. I like to increase some trace minerals such as zinc, copper, manganese, some selenium, depending if it's, well, for leghorns, not so much as important as for browns, but iron as well. So there's some things that you can do to remediate, but the main thing for infection is boost feed intake. This boost feed intake and boost nutrient intake. In terms of additives, we said about the byproducts, so 25 hydroxy, 1 alpha dehydroxy D3, they are helpful. We have several commercial products with this composition. Whatever you can do to improve intestinal and liver quality, such as what we mentioned in terms of herbal extracts, probiotics, all of this can be super helpful, but expensive.
Thank you, Peter. Next question is, if night temperature is 21, but daytime 28 to 29 degree, what is cooling pump setting? Either to run on or off timer or directly on temperature setting?
So if I understand the question, the proper response should be directly on the temperature setting, Dr. Raman.
Thank you, Daniel. Next question, can midnight feed be used in rearing period?
Dr. Santana, can you give us the support? You had a big experience about the management of midnight feeding in reading and laying and
Okay, thank you, Dr. Daniel. The question is, can we provide midnight feeding in the rearing? Is in the special case, in the worst body weight gain and worst uniformity, we can apply midnight feeding, especially after the steady lighting, we can apply the midnight feeding. So the important thing that we should keep in mind that we need minimum 3 hours dark before we do midnight feedings. That is the key point. So we need a dark time, minimum 3 hours, then we can provide midnight feeding to help the bird get better uniformity and better body weight. Thank you, Dr. Ram.
Thank you, Santana. Next question, how much fat can be added as a replacement of carbohydrate during hot weather, keeping in view pullet quality?
I guess this we kind of answered this already in the previous question about free fatty acids or oil. That one depends a lot on what you have in terms of raw material or fillers like fiber sources and how much energy you are using. But as I said, you can have diets with, depending on these conditions, from 0 to 6% of oil. But I would say it's very common to have your diet between 1 and 3% of oil would cover almost 90% of the laying diets in terms of mesh feed. So, but I would, as I said again, I like to keep no less than 1%.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And we move on to the next question. Reducing the energy levels of for high feed intake is suitable for all age levels of birds?
Okay,
I think this
so
question is for hot
regarding this-
season.
Yeah, if you want to take that, Princess, please.
Reducing the energy
Yeah.
level, sorry. Okay, yeah, okay, Prem, please carry on.
Okay, so regarding the lower energy, right? Lower energy for higher intake. So we normally provide lower energy levels during the developer stage, because as mentioned by Vitor and Daniel regarding the fatty liver issue, normally we start to reduce the energy levels at that time, at that period, to control the body weight. We don't want those birds to get very heavy later at the rearing period. And also by providing a lower energy intake, a lower energy developer diet, that could also help the birds to eat more, and that could we have better laying hens that could better transition to a higher feed intake in the laying period. And also one thing that I think Vitor also pointed out in his presentation is the pre-peaking diet. We provide the pre-peaking diet with a lower energy density and higher amino acid. The lower energy density can definitely help and train again the birds to eat more and help to boost egg size with a higher energy, with a higher amino acid density. So those are the key periods where we can provide a lower energy density for higher intake stimulation.
Thank you, Princess. And next question is similar like what it was asked earlier. How to prevent cannibalism in summer with feed or nutrition?
Yeah, I guess we answered that already, right?
Yeah, it's done.
move
So
to the
we move
next
on to
one,
the
yeah.
next question. What about well-sealed and light-proof house in hot and humid season? Change light hours in the night from 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. and feed during cooler hours of night and hence egg collection as well. Do you think this can be applied?
Let me read again the question. What about when selling and light through house hot and humid season changing light hours in the night from 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. and feeding during cooler hours and night, and it's like they change the activity they have. Sometimes where country was, I think in Colombia, the Caribbean place, the one customer tried to do that and the result was not good. So in the for this moment, the best solution or the best management about it is not to change the activity the bird. It's only to protect the bird between the more heat, stress situation during the day between 10, 11 a.m. to 4, 5 p.m. It's more easy, more easy to achieve than change the activity the birds. I don't recommend.
Yeah.
Definitely.
If I can add something, I guess the own question help us to answer. I would say depends a lot on how well sealed is this. But if you are super confident that's very sealed, it can be done. And the proof that I have that can be done is because we do in our operations. So, for example, in part of our pedigree houses, that it's 100% sealed with HEPA filters, with light straps, with everything, and we can keep completely 100% dark if you want. We have our day lamp is between 10 p.m. and 2 p.m. So after 2 p.m., finish the day. And the reason we do that is because it's to synchronize with the workers' conditions. So when the workers get to the farm, we have already a certain amount of eggs and the routine is already going on. And after the light finish for the birds, they can do the proper work outside of the shed. And to do this, it's a risk because if you have any light escape getting in, you completely disrupt the condition of the birds. But as Daniel said, it's very easy to lose control. But if you do this, if you have the proper investment, if you have a pedigree house, if you have a completely dark sealed house, it can be done. And it would be a good strategy, yes, to feed the birds more in the night. If you have the peak of activity, let's say at 2 a.m., for sure, it's better than have the peak activity than 2 p.m. So it's risky, but it can be done.
Thanks, Peter and Daniel. We move on to the next question. How will young and old flock respond to heat stress? Any nutrition strategy to mitigate separately?
Well, they both respond to heat stress kind of in a same manner, but same manner, but it's kind of a different strategies because one is still gaining a lot of body weight and the other one is more in a stable condition. So I would say it changes, yes, a little bit how you fight heat stress for a pullet or how you fight heat stress for adult hen in terms of nutrition. And the main difference is you can be much more aggressive in reduce energy in adult hen than in a pullet, considering body maintenance. But of course, 45% of the energy is for egg. So I guess depends a little bit on what you want. And for me, it's two stages of fighting heat stress, as I said in my presentation. First one, the first stage where we're just trying to mitigate a little bit. Sometimes when it's too extreme, you don't care about egg production anymore. You just want to keep your birds alive. So in this way, you can do much more aggressive changes in the adult hen, and you can recover that later. But if you do this in a pullet, you're gonna completely damage the body weight development or the body frame development, and you're gonna have definite consequences. And you cannot recover as easy as you would have in an adult hen, in my opinion.
Thanks, Victor. And the next question is related to the previous question. It is about the changing the lighting program for the hot season in a well-sealed house. And the question is, egg laying will be according to light on from 6 p.m. or will it be in the morning in a light-proof shed?
Yes, it's like we were saying, right? It's of all of us here that work in a hatchery, for example, we all know the sensation, right? That when you are in a hatchery and you have the lights on, and when you pass through the window, you see that's night, and you didn't even realize it's night. So for the hens, if they are in a light-proof environment, the natural day for them is what we designed for them. So it's the beginning of the day, 16 hours of light, end of the day, regardless when you put this. Do you agree, Daniel?
Yes, really.
Yeah. Thanks, Victor. And next question: which type of trace minerals are best for high laying?
All of them. High line is laying hen. What's best for high line is best for all laying hens. It's physiology. You need all the trace minerals, and you need all the trace minerals in a proper, not only level, but ratio between them. We know that you have a mineral interaction chart. So what you have in the management guide, it's a good start. If you have some challenges, we can discuss the proper situation. But all of them, if you're talking about actual quality, you have some that will affect more. If you are talking about feather coverage, you're going to have others. If you are talking about internal quality, egg quality, or shell quality, or shell flexibility, all of them are going to be affected by minerals, but all of them are important.
Okay, thanks, Victor. Next question is, digestible amino acid balancing in high-line diet, how much crude protein can be reduced?
Depends how much eggs you want to lose. Princess, do you want to answer that about reducing the ideal protein ratio?
Yeah, reduce as low as possible without harming the production. Because we no longer, base it with a crude protein. It's great that you ask about the digestible amino acid, because that's one major thing that we really need to point out. We have this ideal amino acid profile that is available in our management guide. And it's a very great tool to formulate. It's very easy to use. Just plug in all those numbers. You don't need to use all of those individual amino acid numbers to put in the formulation software. And it will definitely help you to reduce, use more of the synthetic amino acids, which are very good and more digestible for the birds. And it can also help to reduce the cost of the feeds. And yeah, it depends on your goal. But in terms of the heat stress condition, definitely that would be very helpful in following the ideal amino acid profile.
That's perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Prince.
That's it. We just added, Dr. Hammer, that we have all our commercial guides globally are moving to two sets of nutritional recommendations. One, what we call economic recommendations, and one, what we call high performance recommendations. And it's not only about the ideal protein, but for sure the ideal protein is one of the changes. And of course, with a more aggressive ideal protein, you're going to have more egg mass, and the opposite. So as Princess said, if you reduce, you're going to lose egg mass. So depends on what you want. If you want 92% of peak with a cheaper diet, or if you want 97% of peak with a more expensive diet, both of them can be feasible at the end of the day. Depends on what you want.
Thanks, Victor and Princess. Next question is, halogen bulb LED effect on layer health?
Dr. Rama, to be honest, I didn't know about, or I didn't know negative comments about the halogen bulb lead effect on layer head. So I don't have in this moment the proper response. I don't know, Vito, did you know, or Princess or Santana, if you know about the halogen bulb can affect?
I heard something about especially if you have on the growing phase, you can disrupt a lot the uniformity temperature because the halogen bulbs emits a lot of heat. So especially during heat stress, for example, if you are still lighting the birds after, let's say, 4 or 5 weeks, you can generate even more heat stress for the birds because the halogen bulbs are using even for heating the first week of or the first 2 weeks of the chicks. And I don't know, that's not scientifically, that's an observation, but I think it's more difficult to uniformize halogen bulbs than LEDs because the lighting density is super high, so it gets super strong in one point of the shed, and you have some darker spots in another point. So, but that's more like a personal observation. It's not scientific, it's not proven. But one thing for true is the temperature generated. I don't know if Santana and Princess, you have any other ideas?
I don't have experience with the halogen bulb.
Yeah, mostly for the temperature increase in the first 14 days, they will help.
Yeah, but if you
Yep.
keep using as a lighting
For the
program after that,
healthy, so yeah, only for some heater to have the heater.
mhm. It's
Okay,
very
thanks.
yellow,
Yeah,
right?
can we move to the next question, please?
Please.
Yes.
And Dr. Helm, I guess we have, according to the program, we have 40 minutes of Q&A, so we should have space for 2 or 3 questions more, I guess.
I think we have just 4 questions. I think that's all.
Okay.
So what is the light schedule for layers, highline layers before the onset of lay? Will there be difference in the schedule for hot and cold season?
Okay, we can split this question between Princess and I. We can talk about the first part of the discussion, the question about what is lighting schedule for layers in highline before the onset of lay. It depends about what is the egg target. My understanding is in India, the egg target is for looking for low egg weight, with almost 55 grams, the egg size like target. So we need to promote to working fast step down, but it depends about if you are achieving the body weight and the uniformity. When we can achieve easily the body weight uniformity, we can to get the constantly light 12, 10, 11 hours, depending about the house system, the open or closed system. We can get these total hours maybe between 6 to 7, 8, or 9 weeks of age. If you cannot achieve early good body weight and good, excellent uniformity, you need to delay until 8, 9, or still 10 weeks of age to achieve the constantly hours. But your management, in your nutrition, in your house system condition is good, you can ending or you can achieve the constant light between 6 to 7 weeks. But depend about the egg size target in the market, but in the farm depend about the condition and about how are you getting the body weight and the uniformity. Because we cannot push more pressure to finish early when our body weight and when the uniformity is a disaster in the farm or is very poor. I prefer to delay because we don't like to achieve the body weight with the high density diets. For example, is the first topic to work is about the management. And lighting program, lighting schedule is part of the management to achieve the proper feed intake, and then with proper feed intake to get proper body weight and uniformity. And the second part, the question, Princess, you had a lot of experience in open science, Asia, about how to management the lighting programs in open size, especially mainly in open size in hot or winter seasons.
Well, I think you've already pointed out, Daniel. It depends. If you have hot climate, definitely you would need more slower step down and constant light of 12 hours, especially if you're using an open-sided housing system. And whenever we have some trouble in terms of the feed intake and body weight, we can use the midnight feeding as early as 7 weeks, as long as we have the 6 hours of like dark hours. And for the cold climate, like with temperate climate, we normally just follow the same lighting program. It depends on the weight, on the egg weight demand that they want. Normally, they use as low as 8 hours constant light because they're getting very heavy body weight because of the temperature. And yeah, it depends on the body weight body weight trend that you have in the farm, and depending on the egg weight demand that you want to achieve. That's just my addition.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel and Princess. It's the next question: how to compensate body weight loss through panting in hot weather in open sheds? I think this was answered earlier.
Yes, maximize nutrient intake. If you have body weight loss because it's panting, if you have body weight loss because they are not eating, what you have to do is maximize nutrient intake through reformulation, through feed management, through whatever you can do to maximize and decrease the negative energy balance that we explained. You have to minimize that for energy, for all other nutrients.
Yeah, thanks. The next question is: organic minerals in summer days can be helpful to overcome heat stress?
No, in my opinion, but organic trace minerals, they are more bioavailable. And during heat stress, we have reduced feed intake. So you have more possibility to keep the mineral levels in the bloodstream and circulating. So I don't see how they directly make you overcome heat stress, but for sure it's a better form of mineral to be fed during heat stress. So it's a little bit different, in my opinion.
Yeah. Thanks, Veteran. Is the last question of our webinar today. The question is sesquiu carbonate. You have some experience with the use of sesquiu carbonate to reduce heat stress.
Yes.
Should any consideration be given?
No, it's helpful. It's a very interesting way to keep a good electrolyte balance. But at the end of the day, it's all about the electrolyte balance and give the capacity to the birds to have enough hydrogen to buffer the alkalos, the blood alkalos that they have. So as much other products, it's very helpful as using good electrolyte balance, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a good product. I have no problems using it. I use it. I have in some areas. It works fine.
Thanks, Victor. Yeah, we completed the Q&A session. It's long and we finished. Over to Mr. Venkat for closing the session.
Okay, so thank you, Victor, Daniel, Princess and Santana for, from my right of the world and to the left of the world. Truly international, Highline International, as you say. So we've got international speakers and we got international participants. I think I saw some 25, 30 countries, participants from 25, 30 countries all over the world. So really appreciate everyone who joined. Thank you very much to our speakers. And we will be sharing, a lot of people asked, will we be sharing the presentation and will we be sharing the recording? So yes, we will be sharing the recording on social media, and Highline does share everything on their website also. So appreciate everybody's attendance. Even now 70 people attendees there, I can see. So thank you for staying back and all the lovely questions. Until next time, thank you. Sayonara. Bye.